When was the last time you had enough time to actually think about your teaching instead of just keeping up with it? If you're like most language teachers, the school year is a constant cycle of lesson planning, grading, answering emails, attending meetings, and preparing for the next day. But summer offers something a little different. We have some space. We have space to reflect, to learn, to create, and to prepare for the kind of teaching that you really want to do next year. But I also know that summer doesn't look the same for everyone. So in this episode, I'm going to share 5 ways language teachers can use whatever time they have this summer to grow professionally without sacrificing the rest and balance that we all definitely deserve. So let's jump in. Whether you're planning your first lesson or celebrating your 20th year in the language classroom, I understand exactly where you are. I'm Joshua Cabral, and I'm also a language teacher in my 29th year of teaching. Now, I also have the opportunity to support schools and teachers all across the country who are working towards increasing proficiency and building confidence in their students. This is the World Language Classroom Podcast, with over 200 episodes of practical strategies tested in real classrooms just like yours and mine. So let's jump in. Vamos, allons-y. Hello, my friends. Bonjour, mes amis. Hola, mis amigos. Welcome to the World Language Classroom Podcast. I am Joshua Cabral, and I thank you, as I always do on every episode, for taking the time to look at your teaching, to hear things about teaching, just to spend time with me here on the podcast. Makes you a really introspective teacher, and I appreciate that you do that, and for also just spending the time here with me. And we are approaching the end of the school year. Some of us are already out for the year, depending on where you are. Some of us might have another week or two to go. So we're in different places, but we're definitely getting to the end of the school year. As we approach summer break, I often hear 2 very different conversations among teachers. I'll talk specifically about language teachers, but most teachers, these are the conversations they're having. There's one group that says, I'm not doing anything school related this summer. I need the time to just move away from it and just have something else to do, and I'm just not going to focus on it. And then there's another group that has already signed up for graduate courses, or they're going to conferences. They have these curriculum projects going on, and there's enough professional learning to create a whole second job that they have lined up. Now, I don't think that either extreme is necessary. Our summers should absolutely include rest. It should include family, maybe some travel, hobbies, reading for pleasure, sleeping in a little later, all of the things that help us to recover from a demanding school year. Now, at the same time, summer is one of the few opportunities that teachers have to work on their teaching instead of simply surviving their teaching. So today, I want to share 5 things that language teachers can do during the summer that are usually pretty difficult to find the time to do during the school year. And let's also be honest that summer is not the same for everyone. Summer looks different for every teacher. So before we dive in, I just want to acknowledge that important point that not every teacher has the same kind of summer. Some teachers are raising their children and suddenly become full-time camp counselors and chauffeurs for the summer. And some are caring for their aging parents or other family members. Some teach summer school. Some work second jobs or seasonal jobs to supplement their income. Some are taking graduate courses. And some are simply trying to recover from a school year that took everything they had. And thank you for doing that, by the way. But sometimes conversations about making the most of summer can unintentionally feel like one more thing added on to an already full plate. So that's not what I'm trying to say in this episode at all. This is not suggesting that you spend your entire summer working on your teaching. It is about recognizing that if you find yourself with a few extra minutes or a few extra hours here and there, a quiet morning or an afternoon at a coffee shop, sometime while you're traveling, or a few evenings spread across maybe even several weeks, finding just these little opportunities that can help to make your next school year a little easier, definitely more effective, and hopefully, in the end, more enjoyable. And the things I'm going to share do not require 40 hours of professional development. You don't need to redesign your entire curriculum. Now, sometimes one idea can really change your entire school year, but it's about finding the time to make sure that we're doing it well and not just trying to get it done because we have so many other things going on during the school year. So that's what I'm talking about when we find the time over the summer where we don't have all these other things pulling our attention, and we can look very specifically at something we're doing in our classroom and how we can be proactive about how we're going to go about it. So the first thing I will suggest is to reflect on what actually worked during this past school year. One of the hardest things to do during the school year is to stop and reflect. So if a lesson goes really well, or maybe a lesson doesn't go so well, or students really enjoyed an activity, or maybe they didn't enjoy the activity. Maybe students struggled with a particular unit. And then we immediately move on to the next day. We have other things to do. We have meetings to get to. We have to start the next unit, depending on what your curriculum is saying that you have to do. And we don't always have the time to stop and reflect on what happened in that unit. Do you want to do it the same way again next year? Is there something you want to change? What is that? And then by the time June arrives, many of those details are already fading. One thing I often do during the summer is revisit lesson plans and assessments and units from my previous school year, and I'm very surprised a lot of the times. I rediscover activities that students absolutely loved, enjoyed, and got a lot out of that somehow disappeared in my teaching and I never actually repeated. So here's your practice exercise if you want to look introspectively at your teaching this summer. I would ask you to create 3 lists. Those lists will be what you're going to keep doing, what you're going to improve or enhance, and then those things that you're going to stop doing. So for that keep doing list, these are activities and routines that consistently engage students. These are also those assessments that provide really useful information and formative information for you as the teacher and provided students with the opportunity to show what they can do with the language. And also keep those units where you see that students are talking about them long after they're over. So that's your keep doing. And then for your improvement or your enhancement, look at those units that have potential but just need adjustments. The activities that maybe felt repetitive or need some sort of tweak to make them a little better. Or maybe it is an assessment that didn't quite measure what students can do with the language. It was a lot more about knowing about the language, and maybe you want to tweak that and make it an IPA next time. So what are those units where you want to improve? So we have our keep doing. They went well, so you want to keep doing it. And then we have those units that we want to improve slightly. And then our other list is those things you're going to stop doing. The activities that you're only keeping because you've always done them, and they might feel a little legacy in your approach. Or worksheets that create work without creating learning. You know, what are those looking like? Or projects that require enormous effort, but they produce very limited opportunities for students to actually engage with the language. So as you're doing these, you might see in the moment that they created something beautiful, some sort of board or poster. And then when you really think about it over the summer and you look at it and you say, but students actually didn't really engage in much language. It was more of an art project. So sometimes the school year can move way too quickly for this sort of reflection. So summer gives us the opportunity to step back and see the bigger picture. So what are your lists of those things that you're going to keep doing, those things you're going to improve, and then those things that you're just going to simply stop doing? Now, the second thing that I will suggest is to learn one new teaching skill deeply instead of 10 really superficially. One thing that I have learned over the years, we suffer from way too many ideas. So have you ever attended a conference and you had filled pages and pages with notes, saved dozens of session handouts, and left feeling really inspired by all of those screenshots that you had taken of all those slides along the way? And then 3 months later, you realized you had implemented almost none of it. Most of us have been there. Now, the problem isn't motivation. The problem is information overload. This realization is actually what led me to create the Ready for Tomorrow Quick Win PD courses. I wanted professional learning that respected teachers' time. I wanted something focused, practical, and immediately useful. Now, most of the courses take about 30 minutes to complete and focus on one specific instructional challenge or area of improvement for you. Not 10 challenges, just one. And meaningful implementation comes from really focused learning. So if you'd like to take a look at the Quick Win courses, the link is in the show notes, or you can go to wlclassroom.com/quickwin. But I'll give you a few examples of what those courses could possibly be for you. Each course has an audio component where I walk you through all of the notes and the background, and then the template where you can use it in your classroom. And you have all of that within the PDF so that you can use it right away, including the link to listen to the audio right there. But I'll just give you a couple of examples of some of the areas you might want to look into. So one of the courses is on intentional planning for proficiency. And this is where many teachers tell me that they understand proficiency-based instruction sort of in theory, but translating that into daily planning can be difficult. And this course focuses on designing lessons that move students toward communication goals rather than simply covering vocabulary and grammar. So for example, instead of planning around, the food unit, we start with what students will actually be able to do with the language. Can they order a meal? Can they explain preference? Can they compare restaurants? And that shift is really important. So if you're looking for intentional planning in your classroom and really planning for proficiency, look into this particular course. Another course example is the course on turning a vocabulary list into a communicative task. And one of the most common frustrations in language teaching is hearing students say, "I studied all the words, but I can't remember them." And in this course, you will explore how vocabulary becomes way more meaningful when students use it to accomplish something. So instead of memorizing words about, say, clothing, students use the words to recommend outfits or compare styles or to prepare for a specific event. And then the language suddenly has purpose. So in this course, you will hear all about how you can take that vocabulary list and turn it into a real communicative task. Another one of the courses is on taking your first steps in teaching grammar in context. And grammar is one of the most challenging areas for teachers. Most of us want to move away from those isolated drills, but we're not always sure what that looks like. Now, in this course, you're going to explore practical ways to help students notice and use grammar in really meaningful context rather than treating grammar as a separate subject. Now, another one of the courses is about interpersonal speaking, and this course is focused on boosting interpersonal speaking skills at all levels, which means that it's not just for intermediate and advanced students. Interpersonal speaking is achievable at the novice level. So if you take a look at one of your classes and you just ask yourself, okay, if I recorded this class tomorrow, how many minutes would students actually spend communicating with one another? Not responding to the teacher, not reading aloud, but actually communicating. And in this course, it is very focused on structures and activities that increase student interaction in the classroom. And then the last course I will highlight is about using authentic texts at every proficiency level. Sometimes teachers look at authentic resources and they think that they're only for more advanced students. But beginners can work with authentic resources too. We just need to adjust the task, how they're interacting with it, rather than simplifying the resource itself. So maybe you're looking at menus or advertisements, maybe a weather forecast, some social media posts, a poster for an event. Any sort of those things are authentic resources. And students can engage with real-world language much more easily than many of us sometimes realize. And one of the reasons that I created these courses is because I know how many competing demands teachers face, not only during the school year, but during the summer as well. Many teachers, as I said earlier, are balancing jobs and family responsibilities, caregiving, traveling, and so much more. And you also need some rest. So the goal is never to create another giant project for you. The goal in suggesting that you take advantage of one of these courses this summer is to create focused professional learning that you, as the teacher, can realistically complete in one sitting, in one morning, one afternoon, and then be ready to immediately apply it in your classroom when you go back this fall. And for teachers who need or are looking for professional development hours, summer is often the perfect time to earn those clock hours while focusing on topics that really support your classroom teaching. And with each one of these courses, you can get a personalized certificate of completion with your clock hours on it. So those are just a couple of the examples. There were 15 of those courses. I talked about 5 of them, but if you want to really focus in on 1, 2, or maybe 3 particular areas of your teaching, definitely take a look at those courses. The link to all the courses is in the show notes, or you can get them on my website at wlclassroom.com/quickwin. Okay, so we started with the recommendation of looking at your activities from the year. What are those things that you want to keep doing? What are those things you want to improve? And then what are those things that you're just not going to do anymore? And then we looked at focusing on specific areas of your teaching, and you can do that by engaging with some of my Quick Win PD courses. So now let's move on to some other suggestions for your summer. Now the next one is to build resources that save time all year long. One of the best uses of summer professional development time, or just your summer time when you're thinking about your teaching, is to create systems instead of individual lessons. Because individual lessons help for one day, but a system can be a go-to that you can go back to and repeat, and a framework that you have in mind for the entire year. So, for example, create a set of interpersonal speaking templates. Templates are amazing. You can use them in all of your units. Develop a framework for quick writes if you're trying to do more writing in your classroom. So it won't be reinventing it in every unit, but you already have students ready to do quick writes because they've seen it. It's the same form, whether you're doing it electronically, whether you're doing it on paper, that as soon as you give it, you just change out the prompt. But you have created this in advance. Or build a collection of reading activities that can be reused with different texts. So regardless of what they're reading, they're going to do the same activities with it. So some way that students are engaging, maybe artistically, some sort of summary of something that they're reading, but you're not changing up the questions every time. You're finding the new reading, but you already have the template for how students are going to engage with it. And then refine your assessment rubrics so they work in any unit and you're not recreating them for each unit that you do. I always find that really well-designed templates save more time than creating dozens of individual activities from scratch. And the more that you have routines and templates, the less you speak English in the classroom, and you can stay in the target language because students already know what to expect. And then when school starts, you will thank yourself that you have these things ready to go. And the next thing is to explore ideas that you've been really curious about all year perhaps, but just haven't had a chance to dive into. So every teacher has this sort of list. You know the one, the list of things you've wanted to learn more about all year. Maybe it's proficiency, comprehensible input, using authentic resources, doing more with interpersonal communication, doing more with writing, maybe it's assessment. There's all these areas that perhaps you want to learn a little more about. And during the school year, those interests often get pushed aside because immediate needs take priority. But summer creates a little bit more room for curiosity. So choose one of your questions, one area, one topic, and spend a little time exploring it. Not because somebody told you to or it was assigned or you have to do it, not because it's an evaluation rubric of what you're doing over your summer, but it's something that you are genuinely interested in and want to learn more about, because if that's the reason you're doing it, you will follow through and you will actually enjoy it. And then my last suggestion for your teacher summer, start your year feeling prepared and not anxious about what you're going into. So think about two teachers arriving in August. The first teacher spends the final weeks of summer scrambling to remember what worked last year, and then the second teacher spent a few hours over the summer reflecting, learning a new strategy, creating a few reusable resources and templates. Now, neither teacher worked all summer long. Neither teacher completely redesigned their curriculum, but one begins the year with greater clarity and confidence. And preparation doesn't require enormous amounts of time. You just need to be intentional about it. Because even a small investment during the summer can create momentum that will really drive you throughout your entire school year. So as we wrap up these suggestions, I want to return to where we started. Summer looks different for every teacher. Some of you will travel, some of you will spend a lot of time with your family, some of you will work summer jobs, some of you will take graduate courses, some of you will focus on rest and recovery. And all of these are the realities of our teachers' lives. If you decide to invest a little time in professional growth this summer, I encourage you to make it practical, make it manageable, make it something that will genuinely improve your classroom experience next year, not just doing it to do it, and making sure that it is directly related to your particular students, your particular curriculum, what you do in your classroom, and not something that's very, very general. And that's exactly why I created the Ready for Tomorrow Quick Win PD courses. They're short, they're very focused learning, and they are designed to use specifically in your classroom with your content and with your students. And the link to check out all 15 possibilities is in the show notes, or you can see them at wlclassroom.com/quickwin. So now going into your summer, remember, no overwhelming commitments. Those don't follow through. No giant projects. You don't have the time for it. Just meaningful professional growth that fits into real life. And remember, the goal in all of this isn't to spend your summer becoming a completely different teacher or to feel like you didn't do a great job last year, because a lot of this is recognizing what a great job you did. The goal is to spend a little time perhaps becoming a bit more of an intentional version of the teacher that you already are. So a quick recap of all of these suggestions is to reflect on what you did last year and decide on those things that you're going to keep doing because they went well. What are those things that need improvement and what you're just going to simply stop doing because it didn't go well? And then do you want to focus in deeply on one particular area? And the best way to do that is by using one of my Quick Win PD courses. And again, you have the link in the show notes for all of those. And then the next suggestion was to build resources that save you time, like those rubrics that can be used for every unit, for those writing assignments where you're just changing out the prompt, but the format's the same. Templates will save you so much time. And then explore ideas that you've been curious about but haven't had the time to dive into. And then lastly, start the year feeling prepared and not panicked. That's the reason to do all of this stuff this summer. So enjoy whatever summer looks like for you as you're finishing out this school year, and become the intentional teacher that you are so that you go into your school year prepared and reflective. So thank you so much for listening and for all of the incredible work that you do to help your students become confident, real-world communicators. And whenever you're looking for ideas to bring proficiency-focused strategies into your teaching, just remember you can find PD options that I offer for you and your school in the show notes or on my website. I will talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. And let's stay connected on social media. You can find me at WL Classroom pretty much everywhere. You'll also find lots of ideas, suggestions, and resources on my website, wlclassroom.com. Now stay curious, keep learning, and continue the great work you do inspiring and supporting your students.